Billionaire hires homeless woman to pretend as his date. Before we continue, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Lucas Thorn sat motionless in his glass-walled corner office, the city skyline stretching far beneath him like a kingdom he ruled yet barely noticed. The room was sterile, white marble floors, chrome furniture, a single orchid on his desk that somehow stayed alive in spite of being forgotten. In front of him lay an ornate ivory envelope, opened but still pristine. The wedding invitation it held might as well have been a declaration of war. Lucas's ex-fiancée, Camilla Hart, was marrying Gregory Vance, his fiercest business rival, and the man he'd once accused of corporate espionage. Camilla had left Lucas a year ago, calling him emotionally unavailable. Now she was marrying someone who was more polished politician than partner. Lucas hadn't spoken to her since, but the invitation had found its way onto his desk like a final taunt. His assistant, Emma, stood across from him with a tablet in her hand, listing potential dates for the wedding. "We can get someone famous," she suggested, scrolling through the profiles of supermodels and influencers, all eager for publicity. "It'll turn heads. Camilla will notice." But Lucas shook his head, leaning back in his leather chair, the invitation now crumpled slightly in his hand. Too perfect. Too expected. That's exactly what she'd do, make it all look staged. His tone was cool, but a trace of bitterness cut through. Emma raised an eyebrow. "You want to surprise them?" "I want to dismantle the entire idea of what they expect from me," he replied. "They think I'll show up with someone equally elite, someone who plays the part, smiles at the right cameras, says the rehearsed lines." He paused, turning his gaze to the glass wall behind Emma. The city pulsed with life, cars moving like blood through veins, people invisible at this height. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, and a slow smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. "What if I bring someone no one would ever predict?" Emma followed his gaze, confused. "Like who?" "Someone real," he said slowly, the words forming as he thought them. "Someone who doesn't belong in that world at all, but walks into it and owns it anyway." "You want someone unpolished?" she asked, cautiously intrigued. "Unpolished, unapologetic," Lucas replied. "The kind of woman who would sit at a table full of billionaires and not care who's watching. Someone who'd be talked about for weeks, not because of what she wore, but because of what she didn't pretend to be." Emma hesitated. "That's risky. It could blow up in your face." Lucas turned to her, the fire in his eyes unmistakable now. "Exactly. That's what makes it perfect." Outside, the clouds broke just slightly, casting a beam of sunlight through the office. Lucas stood, slipping the invitation into the trash with quiet finality. "Clear my afternoon," he said, grabbing his coat. "I think I need to take a walk. Somewhere unexpected." And with that, the billionaire disappeared into the city, searching not for a date, but for a disruption. Rain fell in slow, steady sheets over the quiet street, the kind of drizzle that soaked through clothes without the drama of a storm. The sidewalk shimmered with reflections of city lights, and just outside the dusty window of a used bookstore sat a woman in a worn patchwork coat. Her name was Ellie, though few bothered to ask. With her knees drawn to her chest, she sketched intently in a faded notebook, a cardboard sign resting beside her that read, "No sob story. Just trying to stay human." She didn't beg. She didn't shout. She didn't make eye contact with passers-by unless they made the first move. Most didn't. They walked faster when they saw her, eyes conveniently fixed on their phones or the pavement. Lucas Thorn's car pulled up beside the curb. The door opened and out stepped the billionaire in a tailored wool coat and polished shoes, unfazed by the weather. He was about to walk into the bookstore to kill time, but his gaze landed on Ellie. She didn't see him at first, her focus was on her drawing, her pencil gliding over the page with surprising grace for someone sitting on concrete in the cold. He paused. There was something raw and centered about her, something that didn't ask for pity. She wasn't dirty, not in the way people imagined. Just weathered. Like someone who had lived through more stories than she told. Lucas crouched down beside her, breaking every unspoken rule of his kind. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Ellie glanced up, cautious. Her hand tightened around the notebook before she replied, "People. Ones who think they're invisible." He smiled faintly. "I have a proposition." "Of course you do," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "Let me guess. $100 for some ridiculous social experiment?" Lucas chuckled. "Not quite. I need a date. For a wedding." Ellie blinked, the absurdity hanging in the air. "Excuse me? I'm serious. You pretend to be my date for one night. I'll pay you generously, no strings attached. You wear the dress, play the part, eat the food, and after that, you're free to go." Ellie stared at him for a long moment. Then, suddenly, she laughed. A full, unfiltered laugh that turned a few heads on the street. "You want me to show up to some billionaire wedding? In a borrowed gown? Do I get a tiara too?" Lucas only smiled. "Only if you insist." Her amusement faded into curiosity. The man was serious. Not condescending, not mocking, just strange. And confident. Ellie looked at her notebook, then back at the man offering her an evening away from the cold, from invisibility. "Why not?" she said, rising to her feet. "I've got nothing better to do." And with that, she tucked the notebook under her arm and followed him into a night neither of them would forget. Inside Lucas Thorn's penthouse suite, the air shimmered with the scent of expensive hair products, soft jazz, and anticipation. The apartment, perched high above the city like a glass cathedral, offered panoramic views of a world Ellie had only ever observed from street corners. Now she was standing in the middle of it, wrapped in a borrowed robe, squinting beneath the glare of vanity lights while a glam team flurried around her like bees around a rare flower. "Just relax," one stylist chirped as she sectioned Ellie's hair. "Relax?" Ellie muttered, eyeing her reflection. "You're about to set me on fire with that curling wand." A makeup artist chuckled, dabbing foundation onto her cheek. "She's got a mouth," she said to another stylist. "She's got a mirror in her face and two strangers yanking at her head," Ellie shot back, dry as ever. "What did you expect, a Disney princess?" From a quiet corner, Lucas watched the scene unfold, arms folded, leaning against the wall with a glass of something dark and expensive. He didn't interrupt. He was there only to observe. And what he saw surprised him. Ellie wasn't cowering. She was completely out of place, clearly uncomfortable. But instead of shrinking, she held her ground with sarcasm, grit, and a surprising lack of self-pity. Every quip from her made the stylists laugh, and every time she rolled her eyes, she did it with a charisma that needed no polish. The team worked meticulously. Her wild curls were tamed into loose, elegant waves. Her face, once hidden under the weariness of street life, was now framed with smoky eyes and berry-stained lips. She wasn't transformed into someone else, she was revealed. Beneath the grime and wear, there had always been this woman. Strong. Sharp. Unapologetically herself. Ellie, for her part, eyed the finished look with guarded skepticism. She ran a hand down the silk of the midnight blue gown Lucas had chosen, a simple but striking design that hugged her in all the right places without making her feel like a doll. A pair of sleek heels sat beside the chair like a challenge. Lucas approached slowly, his eyes tracing the way she carried herself. "You look different," he said. She gave him a sideways glance. "Is that rich man speak for wow?" He chuckled. "Something like that." She finally slipped on the heels and stood. Taller. Straighter. The entire room seemed to pause. The glam team stepped back in awe, not because she looked like a model, but because she didn't. She looked like a storm that had learned to walk in silence. Ellie caught her reflection again. Something flickered in her eyes, not vanity, not disbelief, but quiet acknowledgement. This was still her. Just cleaned up. With a small, amused smirk, she turned toward the door, heels clicking confidently against marble. "Let's go crash a wedding," she said. And in that moment, she wasn't pretending. She had already become the woman the world was about to meet. The ballroom glowed with opulence, every surface gleaming under the soft, golden lights cascading from crystal chandeliers. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath the clicking of designer heels, and laughter danced through the air like champagne bubbles. Guests swirled in couture gowns and tuxedos, their conversations polite but laced with judgment, each one hoping to be seen, envied, remembered. Lucas Thorn stood just beyond the grand entrance, his arm bent slightly, waiting for Ellie to take it. She hesitated for only a heartbeat, adjusting the satin drape of her midnight blue gown. Her makeup was flawless, her curls soft and defined, but it wasn't the transformation that turned heads, it was the look in her eyes. Sharp. Steady. Unafraid. As they stepped forward together, the room shifted. People turned. First out of instinct, then curiosity, and finally disbelief. Whispers rose like smoke. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Who was she? Where did Lucas find her? Was she royalty? A foreign heiress? Or a scandal waiting to happen? Camilla Hart, Lucas's ex-fiancée, stood near the center of the room, glass in hand, mid-toast. Her words faltered when she saw them. Her smile stiffened as her eyes locked on Ellie, who met her stare with cool, effortless grace. Not aggressive. Not meek. Just, unshaken. Camilla turned to her new husband, who mumbled something under his breath and quickly looked away. Ellie clung to none of the expected tropes. She didn't bat her lashes or cling to Lucas's arm like a trophy. She wasn't dainty or demure. She moved through the crowd with the steady confidence of someone who'd walked far worse streets and survived them all. Her posture didn't scream elegance, it whispered resilience. That's what made people stare longer than they meant to. Lucas, ever the composed tycoon, found himself momentarily thrown off balance, not by the attention, but by Ellie herself. He'd expected her to play the part, to mimic high society script. But she wasn't following anyone's lead. She was improvising, rewriting the story in real time with every glance, every smirk, every wordless challenge tossed into the air. As they reached the heart of the ballroom, a server approached with champagne. Ellie took a glass, offered a nod of thanks, and sipped without hesitation. Lucas caught the subtle grin on her face, she was enjoying this. Not as a game, not as revenge, but as something more personal. A quiet reclaiming of space. One woman leaned toward another and whispered, "She's not one of us." "She doesn't need to be," the other replied, eyes locked on Ellie. "That's the terrifying part." Lucas turned to Ellie, offering a small toast. "To surprises," he said. She clinked her glass against his. "To walking into fires just to prove you can." As they mingled deeper into the crowd, something had clearly shifted. Lucas had brought Ellie to prove a point. But now, he wasn't sure who the real spectacle was. Her presence had changed the narrative. No longer a plus one, Ellie had become the story everyone would leave talking about. The ballroom glowed with opulence, every surface gleaming under the soft, golden lights cascading from crystal chandeliers. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath the clicking of designer heels, and laughter danced through the air like champagne bubbles. Guests swirled in couture gowns and tuxedos, their conversations polite but laced with judgment, each one hoping to be seen, envied, remembered. Lucas Thorn stood just beyond the grand entrance, his arm bent slightly, waiting for Ellie to take it. She hesitated for only a heartbeat, adjusting the satin drape of her midnight blue gown. Her makeup was flawless, her curls soft and defined, but it wasn't the transformation that turned heads, it was the look in her eyes. Sharp. Steady. Unafraid. As they stepped forward together, the room shifted. People turned. First out of instinct, then curiosity, and finally disbelief. Whispers rose like smoke. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Who was she? Where did Lucas find her? Was she royalty? A foreign heiress? Or a scandal waiting to happen? Camilla Hart, Lucas's ex-fiancée, stood near the center of the room, glass in hand, mid-toast. Her words faltered when she saw them. Her smile stiffened as her eyes locked on Ellie, who met her stare with cool, effortless grace. Not aggressive. Not meek. Just, unshaken. Camilla turned to her new husband, who mumbled something under his breath and quickly looked away. Ellie clung to none of the expected tropes. She didn't bat her lashes or cling to Lucas's arm like a trophy. She wasn't dainty or demure. She moved through the crowd with the steady confidence of someone who'd walked far worse streets and survived them all. Her posture didn't scream elegance, it whispered resilience. That's what made people stare longer than they meant to. Lucas, ever the composed tycoon, found himself momentarily thrown off balance, not by the attention, but by Ellie herself. He'd expected her to play the part, to mimic high society script. But she wasn't following anyone's lead. She was improvising, rewriting the story in real time with every glance, every smirk, every wordless challenge tossed into the air. As they reached the heart of the ballroom, a server approached with champagne. Ellie took a glass, offered a nod of thanks, and sipped without hesitation. Lucas caught the subtle grin on her face. She was enjoying this. Not as a game, not as revenge, but as something more personal. A quiet reclaiming of space. One woman leaned toward another and whispered, "She's not one of us." "She doesn't need to be," the other replied, eyes locked on Ellie. "That's the terrifying part." Lucas turned to Ellie, offering a small toast. "To surprises," he said. She clinked her glass against his. "To walking into fires just to prove you can." As they mingled deeper into the crowd, something had clearly shifted. Lucas had brought Ellie to prove a point. But now, he wasn't sure who the real spectacle was. Her presence had changed the narrative. No longer a plus one, Ellie had become the story everyone would leave talking about. Beyond the glittering chaos of the ballroom, the terrace was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight and the occasional flicker of candlelight from inside. The city sprawled out below in a web of lights, as if trying to remind anyone who stepped outside just how small they really were. Ellie stood alone near the railing, arms wrapped around herself, not from the cold but from everything else. The noise of forced laughter and clinking glasses still echoed faintly through the glass doors behind her. In that world of polished elegance, she had walked tall, but now, alone, she let her shoulders drop. She exhaled, eyes scanning the skyline. "So many people in there pretending," she muttered, as if to herself. "And they think I'm the fake one." Behind her, the doors creaked open. Lucas stepped out, his footsteps soft against the stone. He didn't speak right away. He simply joined her at the railing, silent for a moment, both of them staring out into the glittering cityscape. "You disappeared," he finally said. "I needed air," she replied without looking at him. "Or maybe just space from all the perfect lies." Lucas nodded slowly. "You and me both." Ellie turned to him, studying his face under the moonlight. "Funny," she said. "You've got more money than most people can even imagine. Power, reputation. But you look like you're always trying to disappear." Lucas let out a soft, humorless laugh. "That's the thing about building walls. Eventually, they trap you inside them." She looked down at her hands. "Before the streets, I wanted to be an artist. That notebook I carry? It's full of people who never knew I was sketching them. Strangers. Real faces. Not the kind you wear at events like this." He turned to her, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "And now?" She shrugged. "Now I draw to remember that I'm still here. That I still see." Silence fell again, but this time it felt heavier. Not uncomfortable, just intimate. The kind of stillness that only comes when two people stop pretending. Lucas reached out, his fingers brushing against hers. It wasn't deliberate, not at first. But neither of them pulled away. The contact was small, fleeting, yet it lingered, like a secret shared in the dark. Ellie glanced down, then up into his eyes. This wasn't supposed to feel real, she whispered. I know, he murmured. Before either of them could say more, the terrace doors burst open. A guest stumbled out, laughing too loudly, calling for Lucas. The spell broke in an instant. Ellie stepped back, and Lucas straightened his posture. Duty calls, she said lightly, but her eyes betrayed something deeper. Lucas gave a quiet nod, casting one last glance at her before turning back toward the noise. Ellie stayed behind, her heart thudding softly in her chest, the warmth of his touch still ghosting across her skin. Something had shifted. And neither of them could pretend otherwise. The lounge was tucked away from the buzz of the ballroom, a dim, elegant room of leather chairs, flickering wall sconces, and hushed tones. A place meant for quiet conversations and whispered deals. But tonight, the stillness was shattered. Camilla Hart, resplendent in a diamond-studded gown and barely contained fury, had cornered Lucas. Her voice was low but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Who is she, Lucas? Really? Don't insult me with some story about charity or spontaneity. This, she gestured angrily toward the door Ellie had disappeared through, this is calculated. Lucas remained still, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. She's my date. Camilla scoffed. She's a nobody you plucked off the street. What is this? Some twisted revenge fantasy? You parade her around like a trophy just to get back at me? Before Lucas could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Maybe he didn't need to get back at you. Maybe you're just not that unforgettable. Ellie stood in the doorway, her posture relaxed, gaze steady. She walked in slowly, not like a woman defending herself, but like one who had nothing left to prove. Camilla turned toward her, arms folded. I'm sorry, do you even know where you are right now? I'm in a room full of money and mirrors, Ellie replied coolly. And only one of us seems to think that makes them more important. Lucas looked at her then, really looked at her, not just at the gown or the makeup, but the way she held her ground, unshaken. Camilla bristled. I don't know what your little story is, Camilla hissed. But this game doesn't end well for girls like you. Ellie smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's the thing. I'm not playing. I've slept on sidewalks colder than your heart. I've had nothing but a pencil and a cardboard sign, and I still walked taller than most people in that ballroom. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ellie turned to Lucas, her face softer now, but still guarded. I didn't come here to be a pawn, Lucas, she said. And I'm not going to be someone's mask. I thought I could play along, for one night. Pretend. Blend in. But the truth is, I don't want to. She reached for the bracelet on her wrist, an elegant silver piece he'd given her before they left the penthouse. Slowly, she unclasped it and placed it gently on the table between them. I think I've played enough make-believe for one night. Her voice was calm, not cold. No anger. Just a quiet finality. Lucas stepped forward, as if to stop her, but the words caught in his throat. Ellie offered him one last look, not of bitterness, but of clarity. Then she turned and walked away. The lounge fell silent again. But the storm she'd left behind swirled in Lucas's chest, and this time, it wasn't something he could ignore. A week had passed since the ballroom. Since the heels, the whispers, the glittering stares. Since Ellie had walked away from it all with her dignity intact and Lucas standing in silence behind her. Now, the scene was entirely different. No chandeliers. No tuxedos. Just the river, glinting under the mid-morning sun, and the gentle rustle of trees overhead. Ellie sat on a worn park bench, one leg tucked under her, sketchbook balanced on her knee. Her pencil danced across the page, catching moments few others noticed. A mother adjusting her child's sun hat, a couple arguing quietly by the ice cream cart, a dog asleep on its owner's foot. She looked different now, and not because of makeup or gowns. Her hair was loose, catching the breeze as she squinted against the light, entirely unaware that someone was watching her from across the path. Lucas stood beneath the shadow of a tall maple tree, his suit traded for jeans and a plain white shirt. No bodyguards. No polished shoes. Just him. He hesitated only a moment before crossing the path. Ellie sensed him before she saw him, her pencil pausing in mid-stroke. She looked up, expression unreadable. Lucas stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, unsure for the first time in a long time. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said quietly. "I just needed to say something." Ellie arched a brow but said nothing. "I'm not sorry for hiring you," he continued, eyes honest. "But I'm sorry for underestimating you. For thinking this was just a performance I could control. I didn't expect you to be real. And I sure as hell didn't expect you to matter." Ellie studied him, her gaze steady. "No limo this time?" "No script either," he said with a half-smile. "Just me. Asking if you'd want to get coffee." She tilted her head, not giving him an answer just yet. "No offers? No charity? No fancy restaurant you'll call casual?" He shook his head. "Nope. You pick the place." She stared at him a moment longer, long enough for tension to stir, then finally, slowly, smiled. Not the polite smile she'd worn at the gala, not the smirk that deflected with humor. This one was genuine. Soft. Tired maybe, but real. "Only if I get to insult your coffee order," she said, closing her sketchbook. He grinned. "Deal." They walked off side by side, no fanfare, no headlines. Just two people beneath a blue sky, shoes crunching gently on gravel, silence stretching between them like a blank page. They weren't billionaire and beggar anymore. Not guest and prop. Not mask and mirror. They were simply Lucas and Ellie. Two people who had stripped away the performance, who had learned, through chaos, confrontation, and one unforgettable night, that appearances lied, but connection didn't. And now, with nothing staged between them, they chose not a fairy tale ending, but something far better. A real beginning. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.